At the end of the school year, I went through my kids' photos and realised I've been putting off scrapping their concerts and plays. The photos are just so dark compared to the colourful everyday pictures we take the rest of the year. Is there a way for the page design to make dark photos feel inspiring? Glitter Girl, can you help?
Of course I can. I think with dark photos and concerts and things like that, there are actually two different things that make the photos a little bit more problematic. And I'm just going to work with one of those today, and then maybe in another adventure coming up, we'll look at the second option. So the first thing that makes them more complicated than our everyday daytime photos is purely the fact that they are very dark. They tend to have this black background, and then the only thing where you're seeing color is wherever the stage lights hit. The second factor being that if they're things like taking photos from your seat at a school concert, school play, something like that, you tend to get this photo where, if it were a landscape like this, you have the whole stage as your photo, and then the people you know, your children or your friends or whoever you're there to see, are like this big in the size of the photo, and you're not, you may have a very blurry or grainy shot. And that's a second factor. So I'm going to come back to that in a separate adventure. But for today, we're just going to focus on this idea of a photo that could be very different to our normal pictures. And this is an example of one that I have that's very different than things that I take all the time. But it was taken up close, up in the front near the stage. And what, if you can't quite tell what it was, is that the band is performing, but then they had this wall of rain that came down over the front of the stage. So the photo is focused on the reflection of the turquoise lights on the rain, and you just see the outline of the band. Now, this is a print that I had on my bulletin board for a long time, and it came down recently and has just been sat on my desk trying to figure out what to do with it. So this adventure made me think it's time to get it in my album. But I wanted to show you that it is a damaged print. It's been hanging there. It's got some tape down here, so I'm going to just include that in my thoughts of that. Makes me have an automatic decision of where the embellishment is going to go. I'm going to cover that corner. And I wanted to leave it like this so that you could see this is how it came off my printer when I was running a test print, and that's how it ended up on my bulletin board. So the margins are not even, but it has a white border. And the white border is something that is worth considering when you're dealing with those really dark photos, because I have the option of taking the white border off, and then I'm just going to have a very dark edged photo, and it depends on what background I want to put it on as to that's the effect I want, just the dark edge, or do I want the contrast of the white frame to point out that the image is so dark? So that's what I'm going to go for, is that leaving the white image on, or the white border on, to have the contrast and that sharp edge of the dark line. But I am going to trim it so that my white border goes all the way around in about the same frame. And if you were to cut it down to have the white border off and then change your mind later, remember you could always just add a cardstock mat. You're only going to notice the difference if you're looking very, 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 very closely, and I guarantee that people are not looking at your album so closely going, did she print that with a white border or did she add white cardstock? So it is a choice that you can always go back from as long as you've got a little bit of white cardstock to put around the edge. Now you may have noticed that I don't have my desk in exactly the same way that I tend to start adventures, which is with lots of pattern paper or 12 by 12 sheets on the desk. In fact, I have no 12 by 12 paper out at the moment, and instead I have a ruler. What I'm going to suggest you might try with darker photos like this is to work from the photo out to give you basically a completed layout before you add the background. So I have my ruler here so that I can make sure that I don't accidentally make the page bigger than 12 by 12. But really what I want to do is start with that big photo and create two areas of embellishment, top and bottom, and then get that so that it's going to fit on the page, and then I'm going to audition different backgrounds. So I'm going to try it on white, I'm going to try it on black, I'm going to try it on a few different colors and patterns to see what ends up looking best. So it's kind of creating from the top down rather than from the background up. And it's not something that just works for dark photos. It can work just in helping your helping with any sort of funk when you find that you're putting pages together in the same way all the time. it can be a nice change. Okay, I know I have this corner down here that I want to cover because it has that ugly packing tape at the bottom. I'm just going to leave my ruler here so I can see how much space I have. And I've pulled out all sorts of different embellishments. This may shock you. I am starting to run out of turquoise and aqua in my stash. This is still a crazy amount of stuff that I was able to pull out, but I kept finding that I would go to something that would have had some turquoise and aqua, and I would have used all of the turquoise and aqua and just was left with all the other colors. Okay, I know it's an indoor photo, but because of the rain idea, I thought I might be able to use these. I've used the clouds, but I've never used the raindrops, so I'm determined to get the raindrops in there. And so those are October Afternoon. These are Ellie Studio. That Star Chart die cut is from the Starshine die cut pack. I think actually this one might need to come up here. These are old Cosmo Cricut product, and I pulled them out purely because it had this treble clef, but I don't think it's going to work because of the coloring, which is a shame. I don't really have many music-themed items in my stash. Not that I need themed items, but I just thought it could work in an embellishment cluster. But not this one. I did want to include a big camera. And I'm just looking to see if I should put it here, or should maybe it's where I start this cluster up here. I think that is probably a good idea. So I'm just going to be brave and stick it right onto that photo. And because I have the two groupings that I know it's going to be two, I know they're going to be in those two spots, I can see roughly how much width I have to work with. Then I can start to just build things up and tuck things underneath and on top. It is a different way of thinking as you create, and you can probably tell that it's a different way of thinking because I'm finding it harder to talk at the same time as I glue stuff. So there we go. I know that I want my colors to repeat from one side to the other. So for example, where I've started down here with the big shot of navy, I need to make sure I have some navy up here, and there's lots of aqua up there, so I'm going to make sure that I put some aqua down here. So I'll start with that aqua here that's also going to cover up the tape on that photo, and have this bit of navy. I think I'm going to break that down into separate strips instead of all one piece. And I have another ticket motif that I can put up here, so I can also repeat shapes and motifs as well as colors, things like that, and will help the little gatherings all come together and feel like the two embellishment groupings coordinate, even though I'm not putting identical pieces in them. I do think I want to see if I can work in a cloud up here at the top. Now, how am I doing for height? I really don't have any spare height from that photo, so I need to make sure that I just keep it the height of the picture. But I could go this way a little bit. So what happens if I put the cloud underneath this piece. I'm going to need an extra pop dot to get it balanced. So a little tower of pop dots there. Okay. Yep, still within the 12, so it's going to fit on a page. And then I think I'll be able to, once I have this on a backdrop, I'll be able to get raindrops in here and there. And I think I want to bring in some floral down here, so I was wondering about this big floral piece. And putting it underneath or on top here. I was originally thinking it would go underneath, kind of like this. And the heart shape does mean that I could put it on top and it kind of nests in the shape of the heart. But I think it's just a little too floral if I put it on top, and it minimizes it if I put it underneath. Now, this is getting to be quite a lot that's on top of the photo. But because the photo is big and quite abstract, and I'm not covering anything here that's any different than what you can see, I'm going to go ahead and put it on top of the picture. But if that were not the case with your photo, you could definitely do plenty of embellishment that comes from behind the picture like this. So don't feel that that's something that's some sort of hard requirement if it feels a little wrong to your style. It's not a requirement at all. That also brings in that kind of pinky red color there, which makes me happy. And these two florals are not an identical match, but that's okay. They don't need to be identical, just to pick up on the concept. They're close enough. Similar colors. They're actually from two different Dear Lizzie collections. And I was looking to see if in what I've pulled out, if I'd happen to have any small cameras, because I've used that big one up there. And what about the idea of putting a small one down here? Well, I have this one, but it's quite different in style to that one. So I don't think that that's the best choice. Okay, I might look for one more camera, and then I think it's going to be time to start looking at background options. Success! I went through other things from that same collection there, and I have basically the same camera drawing but without the filled in that I was able to cut out from another element. And I'm just looking at different options of where I might pop that. And I think actually I could go there on top of the cloud, and I think I would like this if it were not for this ticket, but I know I need that ticket there because I have the ugly tape underneath. So I like that line there. So maybe this comes up into this floral. The other thing I found when I was looking for that was this, which is that same floral. And I think this might work. Of course, I have now stuck my sticker to the desk. I think this might just be a nice little edge detail there. Okay, so I'm going to say that that's enough that I can start working on choosing a background. I'm going to put this arrow in here, I think, but I think it might be floating out or something, so just waiting to adhere it. So I have a few different background options. I could go with a pattern. I pulled out this one originally because it matched the other supplies that I'd picked out. But I think this color is just enough green that it's off from this blue, and I think in this case the diagonal lines that aren't on the same diagonal as the lines in the photo, I think that makes this not a great choice. The other side is this cloud print, and actually I don't dislike the cloud print, but it doesn't really fit the mood of the story I want to tell. It's just a bit too outdoorsy for me. I know I've put clouds here and sky and all of that, but I think this just makes it too much of a focus that way. I could go with something that has lots of color. And I don't dislike this one either, actually. I like that it has a cream background with all the shots of the color. But I think you notice that it's a scrapbook page before you notice that it's a photo, if that makes sense. Sometimes if it's a big photo that you really like, or it's a very unique photo, you want the eye to go straight to the photo, and the idea that it's a scrapbook page to kind of be secondary. But sometimes you want it to be a scrapbook page first, especially if you're not 100% in love with the photography. Like sometimes you get those photos that are important to you because they tell a story, or they are your reminder of a certain event that was lovely, but they're not your best photography. And so in cases like that, sometimes I want the focus to be on paper and embellishment and all of that. There's also this option to go with something really colorful and bright that offers a lot of contrast. There is a tiny bit of yellow in this embellishment, so it's not completely bonkers to choose yellow. But I do feel that this combination of the bright in the photo and the bright yellow makes me think daytime, and this is a photo taken at like 10 o'clock at night. So I think that's not the best choice either. Could go monochrome and still have a pattern background, and in this case would really emphasize the photography theme, and that could work. There's nothing here that's horrible. The B side of that is pink, and I think in this case the pink is just a little too feminine for the particular event. But I don't dislike any of them so far. We can go white, which is quite stark, but could throw color on the background here with watercolor or with mist or with ink. And of course the white is easy to journal on. Or I could go black. Now, I think in this case the black is truest to the story, because you're in the dark at a concert like this, everything is dark, and to me this fits the memory best. But in different instances of what the photo is, your memory might be different and one of those other options might have worked better. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So I'm going to go with the black cardstock and just stick this down and then work with my surrounding space that's left. Okay, I still need to get a title on here and my journaling on here, so that's next. But I also have some embellishments that I want to use to kind of bridge the gap between the photo and these groupings and that background. So brads are going to be one of the ways that I'm going to do that. I'm just going to scatter these in the corners of the page so that I think I just have 3 that fit the theme. The other 2 are very at-home themed. But I can put these 2 down there and this one up here. And I need to pick some lettering that will work. The title I'm going to use is a really, really short, so I'm just going to overlap it on top of this embellishment so that it's not going to take up more room over the top of the photo. But if I had a longer title that I needed to use, I have a few different options. One would be to run it on a vertical, either up here or down this edge, or to use really small letters so that I could run it somewhere like here or here, or to not use a title at all, or to just use a small title that could fit into the journaling, so something that's small that could fit here and then writing underneath. But in this case, that's the entire title that I'm going to use. It's the name of the tour, essentially, the name of the performance. So that's what I'm going to add there. Now I do want to get my journaling onto the black background, which means I need a white pen. And I want to get those raindrops in. So I think I'd be better off to put my raindrops in first and write around them, rather than trying to fit them in after I put the writing in. probably enough. Yeah. Okay, so I will get my white pen, and my journaling is going to fit in here, I believe, and then probably the date and place over here. I did originally feel like I was going to add that arrow in, but I think there's enough in that grouping now that I don't want to, and I don't feel like it needs to go anywhere else, so I'll abandon that. But I do want to add one last little touch to just bring that diagonal together, and it was this little tip. I'm going to use black embellishments right on top of the black paper, because the dark surrounding is going to give me that different look for my pages anyway. It's going to look a little different than most things that are in my album. And if I add in this bit of black, some of them are going to be against the lighter bit of the embellishment, so you'll see them a bit more obviously. And the ones that are directly on the black cardstock, I think I will pull this one down and be right on the black. Maybe it goes here. And the ones that are on the black, they're still going to be visible. It's just going to be a different way to look at it because there isn't that contrast that makes it absolutely obvious straight away. And it makes you look a little bit more at the detail of a page, and it just kind of gives you that feeling of something that's slightly different than what you put on a great many of your pages, or at least I do. I don't tend to have a lot of black pages or a lot of this kind of look, and it makes that very different looking photo have a special treatment. But the embellishment is very much the style that you would find on all of my pages. In fact, it's still even the colors that you would find on so many of my pages. So when you flip the pages in my album, that's not going to look out of place. And it's just going to be a little something, and in this case, it's going to be that background that makes you realize, oh, okay, this photo is a little different than all the other stuff. And that's what I think works well, is to embrace the idea of the darker photo and go with it rather than try to fight it and try to make it into some sort of daytime feel. It is going to feel different, but the memory is going to be different as well, so go ahead and embrace that visually. I'd love to see what you do with your dark photos or photos of concerts, plays, anything like that that comes to mind when you see this adventure. You can share with us on the Scrapbook Like a Superhero Facebook group, which you can find a link to below. You can also find a weekly challenge at Shimelle.com. It goes live at the beginning of each week, and this week there is a page to scrap lift, and you can see a few different versions already of how people have taken inspiration from a particular layout and video to make their own pages. I'd love to see what you make this week. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.